These are the copies that you wanted made. Mm-hmm.
Hey, how's everything? Well, that, the one, that's me. No, that's like a month ago. The change month? No, I mean, that's good, that's, I mean, I guess it's not, no. Okay, yeah, but I don't know, I've been activating it, the thing. That proposal. So I, yeah, we can discuss. This is what we work with.
No, we need to do the live streaming and everything from that computer.
Yeah, that's
You need the slide deck for mine, or you have it on?
The what?
It's a,
The slide? You would have to do it for me. So what I'll do is I'll make you co-host and then you can. I don't have, so I wouldn't be able to do it.
so I have to log in, right?
You have to log in.
Can I have the, we have a chat, the password? Oh, that's hot out there. It's just me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not too cold.
Now one thing and something else.
Okay, no, but
So your password is.
Which one? It's just board, right? Board minute. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining tonight. We have Council Member Alexa Vilas who's going to join us. I think she could be here for about an hour. So we're just going to take advantage of the fact that she's here and we'll be able to have a conversation with her. We're having some technical difficulties. The audio playback is a little.
yeah.
Delay? Yeah, there's a little delay.
Hi. Long time no see.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Good. Yeah. The Brian spoke a word about it, or?
Yeah.
Did you? Oh, great.
Yeah, we're here. We have a letter.
I sent the letter back.
You did.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you have a.
Yeah.
I don't know how we're gonna.
Yeah. So I think it's really helpful. Yeah.
You only get that.
Exactly.
Probably this will work.
Yeah.
At the very least.
Yes, I think I'm connected to the entrance.
Some of them do open. Yeah. I can't pull on my show.
Oh, Jeremy, you can go help open up the window. We need-
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that. About affordability.
Can I turn on the AC? You think that would be helpful?
No, because we're still getting hate.
I love it,
Yeah, we're still getting heat. That's why it's dormant.
Thank you, Edward.
Yeah, yeah, they don't shut it off till after Memorial Day.
Oh, the heat.
That's what I'm saying, it's still heat. They're giving heat, that's why it's warm.
I thought it was there.
No, we're still getting heat.
Yeah, no, that makes a big difference, that's nice. Thank you.
Okay, if you haven't signed in, can you please sign in at the back? There's a sign-in sheet. Thank you.
So I don't have the link for the. Okay, I'll try. I think I need you to promote me.
That's what I say, I need to go to Jehovah. You signed in already?
Yeah.
Yeah. Should be joining.
You're not on. Unless you came in as an attendee.
Yeah, I'm on as an attendee.
But promote you to a panelist. And then I'll promote you to a co-host.
Okay, thank you.
This meeting is being recorded.
So I made you a co-host.
Okay, thank you so
So
much.
now you'll be able to share.
Yeah.
So you are showing that already on the screen.
Yeah, it's like a little bit of a lag. All right. I know you don't have a lot of time, so if you want to come up, yeah.
Let me take it to you.
Oh, yes, of course.
You have to open it and then take it in.
Okay, so let's go ahead and open the meeting. Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you again so much for joining us tonight. I know we haven't met in a while, so we're going to open up the meeting and call roll call.
Good evening, everyone. I'm going to be calling the roll call. If you are on Zoom, please unmute yourself when you hear your name. And then after you say here a present, mute yourself once again. Thank you. Julio Peña III. Antoinette Martinez. Thank you. Jeremy Kaplan.
Present.
Thank you. Damian Andrade.
Present.
Thank you. You don't count towards quorum. Jalia Bailey. Gladys Bruno. Justin Campos. Richard Cador. Carrie Conte.
I'm here.
Thank you. You don't count towards quorum. Erin Keith. Michael Tom. Faye Walker. Thank you. Roll call has been called.
So again, thank you for joining us tonight. I know today is one of the most beautiful days, and to be cooped up in here with this heat, thank you for being committed. We did have a number of folks from the community reach out wanting to discuss various housing topics. We did plan on having a conversation tonight about the current administration and its implications on housing moving forward in New York City, but directly here in Sunset Park. But then also simultaneously, we know that the St. Rocco's rezoning is encroaching. And at our last meeting, we had a number of questions regarding our land use principles that were developed by at the council member's office, and where does that stand with the current rezoning? So just really appreciate the council member for making time tonight to be here, and really want to address any concerns that you may have about the current rezoning. There is going to be a presentation on April 13th where the developer is going to come again to speak with the board. There have been modifications made to their presentation, but we're anticipating for the rezoning clock to start soon, and once it starts, it goes. So we do want to take advantage of as much public discussion and community input that we can. So again, really appreciate everyone who's on the line tonight and here in person. Jeremy, do you have anything to add?
We passed around what was, I think, considered the new proposal. So it just gave a snapshot about the proposed units and the affordability, because we were going to discuss sort of what happened with the ballot initiatives and different laws and initiatives that have passed and how that affects affordability. But I think we can sort of dive deeper, especially with the council member, about that. And then also, if anybody wants, the council member has these really good, it's like data about the district. That's, I think, really helpful. That gives a good perspective if anybody wants to grab some more of these. But then I'll actually let the council member speak. And here.
Hi, oops. Hi, everyone. Can everyone hear me online? Oh, I can't see you, but.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you to the Housing Committee for welcoming me here today. I have to extend an apology for not having returned your text message about this very issue, but I'm glad to be here and to talk about this. I can promise you I may not have all the answers, but I will provide as much information as I possibly can. So I think just to start, for those of you who don't know, as Antoinette mentioned, we had developed these land use principles in cooperation with community members. We got community feedback. It was a bit of an iterative process. It was in 2003 for us to put it on for 2004. And in fact, this conversation makes me want to go back. And I think it is probably due time to go back and to see what made sense, where do we have to drill down on, and what changes we may need to make given some of the land use changes, given some of the new experiences, and given kind of where we are. So I think this is a project that with your housing conversation, we may want to also integrate to get feedback.
Yeah.
So I guess, so to start, so this project came to us in very informal terms late 2023, where a group of developer had come and they didn't have a proposal. All they said was, we are thinking about this property, and we want to talk about ideas. And I was like, look, there's no proposal. I don't have anything to respond to. But what I will tell you is what is important to us is deep affordability that actually uses the AMI of this community, Senior housing has been a huge priority for me. It is my daily heartbreak when I have seniors come into our office and we have nothing to offer them by way of support, with the displacement pressure that they face. And then was senior housing affordability. And now I'm forgetting the third one.
Larger apartments. Multifamily.
You remember?
apartments. Multifamily, like
Multifamily, see.
3
Because
bedrooms,
we
yeah.
had
Yeah.
talked about how, many of these projects are studioing their way throughout New York City. And there's no place for families. So I gave them those broad concepts. And then I also mentioned that we were working on these principles and that we would have something forward. And these principles are not a hard and fast. In fact, these principles are really a framework. There's no way to hold anyone to these. What is legally mandated is a ULURP process if there is a rezoning. If it's as of right, they do what they want. And we have actually no engagement with it. And we have no recourse. Even when we try to engage with developers who are doing as of right building, they often do not respond at all. They're under no obligation to respond. One would imagine you'd want to be a good neighbor and respond. But our system is not set up that way. So anyways, we have these frameworks. And then over the course of, I think 2025 is where we had most of our meetings. And in the last, I will say, I provided, this is the last deck. There have been several iterations of this, and I provided this deck to the community board chair because there were about 5 of them, and I have no use for 5 of these giant things. They're better served here so people could look at them. Because if you're like me, I'm a visual learner. I have to actually see and go to the site. Like, I can't conceptualize these things. So there were the developer in this proposal noted kind of what some of their community and elected official outreach is. I will say there were definitely a few meetings in between. Like when we first started, I didn't even know what Watermark was. You guys had done some research and said Watermark actually has another building, which is going up, and gave us a couple of questions to ask the developer. So one of the things that we've noticed in reflecting on this process was in our land use principles, we asked, for more community engagement. Often how these projects roll is a developer will file in the city system and will certify whenever they want. They'll have 1 or 2 meetings and then they'll certify. What we've asked for is more time. I think we got the runway of time. I think what we did not hit is like a full public participation. I think that's one of the areas we need to flesh out. Like, what does that mean and to whom in this next iteration of land use? So they met with us several times. We reported back out to some folks. We got some feedback. We went back to them. And that was kind of our dance over a period. I will say so it's been over a year now, and in our last meeting, which was in February, they came back with a more refined proposal based on some of the feedback. That proposal, obviously, what we were hearing from some of our meetings with residents and some general concerns always is deeper affordability, concerns about height and density, concerns about construction impact, especially all my neighbors who live over there. I live on 31st Street. It's like a constant construction zone. And I'm like, more years of construction, yay. So construction impacts, height and density, and deep affordability. And so those have been kind of the guiding lights of our conversations with them. The proposal has modified over time. It hasn't been gigantic modifications. I will say from the original proposal to what we have before, and I want to stop talking because I think it'd be more helpful also to hear your questions. Dirty math. Original proposal from what we have now is the original proposal was a proposal with 265 units and using the city's affordability matrix, which we've referred to as MIH option 1, which is mandatory inclusionary housing, tells how much affordability you have to have in a project. The original was 265 units and 66 affordable units under MIH option 1. The updated proposal has lost 51 of those units, and so it's at total of 214 units, and our affordability went up to plus 22. So now we're at 88 affordable units. Now, I always use quotation marks on affordable units because they fall under different AMIs. Now, the AMI that hits our community at need is 30% AMI. The city is not building that unless it's on city-owned property and it's a fully city-funded project. This is a private development that one of the properties, actually, the developer will be allowing Fifth Avenue Committee to develop a fully 100 affordable, which will be subsidized by the city, part of the property. So we were able to increase the affordability, decrease the number of units. Also, it's not clear what the final mix is, but there's a good indication here in terms of less studio apartments, more family-oriented apartments, which are larger. So we can go through those unit mixes. In terms of height, which I know were the concerns for many of the neighbors, the building on the 4th Avenue facing originally started at 13. At 14, we're now at 13, so not a giant difference there. The building on 27th Street actually went up one floor from 8 to 9, and the building on 28th Street went from 7 to 8. So those two buildings went up, and this one went down 1. And that was an affordability situation of trying to get as much mix into the buildings. Let's see. The other thing to note was original proposal had 25 parking spots. With the city of Yes Change, because we are a transit-rich neighborhood, we are not Red Hook, they could have waived all of that. We asked them to waive it and to make sure that we could get more affordability. They are only now including 9 parking spots. And even that, for a transit-rich corridor, we could argue we need units of housing. But that's where we stand now. I just want to give you guys a report back. So I feel like I'm spewing a little bit numbers, and I think I'd prefer, unless there are specific questions. Say again? Yeah. Antoinette mentioned that they will be reporting to the board. They have not certified yet, but they have indicated that they want to certify. So when they certify their application, what that means is there is a public review process that the board will have to engage in, where they will get more community feedback and deliberate over a 60-day period. The board will then have to send a vote with whether they approve or they want changes. They will send that to the borough president, and the borough president will review, and then eventually it gets back to the council. So that public process period has not yet started. We are pre-certification. So I guess maybe I'll leave it there and happy to answer questions. Do you have any comments?
Yeah, I think it'll be really helpful. We want to hear from everyone here and folks on the line. I think in looking at this, and to be honest, this slide deck has just recently been made available. So, we'll work to make sure that all of this information is out to folks ahead of the meeting on the 13th, so you have time to digest. But, just flagging that for building C, there are 0 3-bedroom apartments. And there are a total of 48 units. So just curious, council member, if you could speak a little bit about that and what your office has been doing to advocate for larger bedroom size units?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think this was definitely this is not a final mix. I think we flagged the same thing. We flagged still there are more studio one bedrooms in the entire mix, and we want to see, I guess some refer to it as like a reverse bell curve, to get more affordability and larger units. So I think what we want to do is continue to push, let me make sure that I'm looking at it right. Right, because there's a distribution. Hold on, right. So I think we absolutely should argue for more for 3 bedrooms in building C. Right, because even here, you see, it's the majority is studios and 1 bedrooms in building C. And that's exactly, I think what we were saying was not a great mix. We want to see that pushed down. So that's been part of our response to the developer. And I think these mixes, they're not finite. Yeah.
And also flagging that there are no 3-bedroom apartments at the 30% AMI.
Yeah. Well, there's none there's no 3-bedroom apartments at all.
At all,
Yeah.
at any level,
C.
yeah,
Yeah.
building C.
So it's not even just 30% AMI. It's, I think the trade-off here, the
There are in building A and
no,
B.
no, yeah, but
Yeah,
I'm saying in
but
the
just a few.
fully. Now, the 3 units that are here, right? So if you look at, in 30% at all, right? In A and B, there isn't. And is everyone looking at this?
This is-
Okay.
Yeah, this is,
Thank you.
this is this sheet,
Okay,
yeah.
it's like, I would
Yeah.
be so
Have it-
annoyed if
I
I
know
didn't have this in front of me.
Let me try to.
Yeah, sorry, I put it all on one page, but so it's a little bit smaller to read, but yeah, that's
I think your point is right, and that is a point we should push back on. I think the other thing, this unit mix, I think, is only mandate a certain percentage at each income level. So we couldn't stack them all, let's say, on 30%. That would be my dream. But we can't. We're mandated by law a certain percentage at a certain income levels for the mix. So there are constraints with it, which, to me, I think one of our big fights has to be changing the mandatory inclusionary housing policy. I think it is insufficient to meet the needs of a community like ours. So I will flag that as another feedback around the 3 bedrooms.
Yeah, and I would say too that when the developer came and presented, it was last summer or last spring, the biggest emphasis and what Alexa has said too is that basically our community, what's actually really affordable for Sunset Park is pretty much like 60 AMI and less. So I see a lot of the, like, even in the 100% affordable building, the 80%, there's 9 units at 80%. And when I look at those numbers as to what that equates to me, that looks like, as I've seen, I moved 4 years ago, that looks a lot like market rate prices that we're seeing in Sunset Park, and sometimes even more expensive. It's more expensive than the apartment that I live in for sure. And so it's important that when we actually say, well, these are affordable units, it's not actually affordable for the existing community. And then again, the emphasis on that it's so hard to find affordable 2 or 3 bedrooms, and we're just not seeing a mix of that. And I think the issue really boils down to is that people want to claim that. I think we need to think about the affordability in square footage and not just necessarily in units, because the tricky part is they say we have 48 units, but if they're studios and 1 bedrooms versus, and then you look at the square footage for them and they're tiny studios, no family is going to move into them and be able to like have a good living from that. And so it should be emphasized, I think, in some way that I looked more at the square footage and thinking about how we can expand the square footage of the 100% affordable building. Some of the questions that I have, which maybe are too detailed at this point, but I noticed that they've got the two other buildings have like rooftop terraces and garden spaces and stuff. And then there's an extra garden in the back of it too, that I think at the time the developer actually said, maybe we're not sure if the affordable housing, the 100% affordable housing has access to. That wasn't something that they figured out. To me, that comes gross. It becomes a poor, yeah, it becomes a kind of another extension of a poor door. But I also wonder too, if all of these, you have a garden, you have a couple of rooftops, you have some other terraced garden spaces. It looks like actually, what they're doing is they're trying to stack as much amenities for these market rate housing, but we're actually losing space because of that. And so I wonder if you look at it, I'm not an architect or anything, but if we think about you're already creating green spaces, is this garden space just an extra amenity, especially if the 100% affordable isn't offered access to it? And whether that allows us to build out the 100% affordable building further into that garden space. Because I think in some way or another, what happened with the Arrow Linen rezoning was that we were able to push for a smaller building, but the same amount of units and making the building wider. And so I think that's something that should be considered in this, especially for the 100% affordable building, and thinking about using the space as much as possible. And yeah, and then I think also too, another thing that's sort of, I think, frustrating is seeing that how does this use the existing City of Yes has this universal affordability that I would imagine they would be able to get that density bonus. There's a 20% density bonus, but you have to build 20% more affordable housing. The thing is that the AMI range for that is actually between in 60% range. So I'm not sure if these numbers sort of reflect taking advantage of the UAP, what's called the Universal Affordability Program. They did? Okay. So I think the interesting thing is that gives us some leeway because it has to be 60% average for all of them. As a community, we can say, let's dictate that, 80% doesn't make sense. It's not really affordable. We need to have, 30 and 40 and 50 and 60, but it still has to average out,
Yeah, but
unfortunately, to
the
60.
problem is MIH
Yeah.
requires 3 income bands.
Yeah.
So you can't say, well, we only like 2.
Right.
You have to do the 3, and to average it out, you're gonna end up with 80.
You're gonna end up, yeah, and that's the problem.
That's
It's
the problem
100
with
doesn't, yeah.
MIH is that, it's just an inadequate tool to get to what we know our community really needs. And unfortunately, we don't have public land here that we could fully subsidize and do fully affordable units at the rates. Sunset Park just doesn't have it, Community Board 7.
One question I have based off of that is what is sort of the nonprofit status for the church renting out, and then also with FAC, how does the sort of management, as the church still receiving their nonprofit status as a developer now? Because I think that changes the real dynamic of how we see this. I think if this is basically a nonprofit receiving income from a developer, it feels like we really should treat it more like this is almost public land, because you have 2 nonprofits and nonprofit developer holding one building, and then another nonprofit receiving all this money from Watermark Capital. So I think it's a very unique situation, but it also means we should treat it in a way that we should get more deeper affordability, because
Yeah.
there's these nonprofits,
Yeah, so
church.
we had a conversation with the diocese around, how they understood their public responsibility to this community that housed them for so long. And what their intention was here. So especially given, the tax status of the property for so long. So their response was, that the church, that they understood that they did not want to sell the land, that this is a lease agreement with Watermark Capital, who I think is a partner in doing other development projects with them. Essentially, that any fees that they were able to collect, that, they were using it for their operations because quite frankly, the Catholic Church is having a lot of problems maintaining congregations and all their properties. Which I will say was both honest and frustrating. However, this property will be paying taxes. And so I think that is an important shift because I think it would have been insult to injury to both have a property that is not paying and then not having had payments all those times. But certainly, obviously, they're going to be making a profit here. So, I think there's not much we can compel there. Mandating now how Fifth Avenue Committee got involved. Fifth Avenue Committee won't own the land, right? They are giving the rights to develop the affordable housing by Watermark Capital, as I understand it. They sought out that partnership. That wasn't something that I asked them to do. And given Fact's history at doing affordable development and engaging with developers, they sought out that partnership. I think, so I think it's not a matter of, at least as far as I understand the transaction, that there is kind of a conflict and that you can equate because it was church property at one point, that now under Fact's management, because it's a nonprofit, that it go deeper affordability. Fact will require full government subsidy. And the more subsidy it gets, the deeper the affordability can go. And we know right now, in the context of affordable housing development, that depends very much on the federal government and low-income housing tax credits. There's real challenges that are being faced. So I think it's that, frustrating context that we operate in and around how we do housing.
Want to give folks here an opportunity and folks online, if you have any questions for the council member. Maria?
Hold on. They won't be able to hear you.
While Maria's coming up, we did have one question from Elise, who is on Zoom. Elise is asking, why are the majority of the permanently affordable units designated to building C? Could the developer place more affordable units in building A and B? Are you familiar with the unit breakout at all?
Yeah, so the reason why there is a concentration 100% is in building C is because the developer has agreed to give that building to a nonprofit developer that will be 100% publicly subsidized. So the resources will be there to do that 100% in building C. Buildings A and B are under MIH, mandatory inclusionary housing, which is a 20%, right? So it's like 20% of the units have to be affordable under 3 income bands. So they distribute within those 3 income bands. Normally, when you see that, you rarely see MIH include 30% band, because it's the band that is the most expensive because it has the deepest level of affordability. So you often see those bands in 60, 80, and 100, which 100 AMI is not affordable. But that's typically what you see.
Maria, your question?
Okay. I have pages of questions at this point.
I'm sure
Every
you do.
time I look at this or I read something, another layer of questions comes out. The tax situation, we are not being told the whole thing. And unfortunately, community boards, and indeed this community board, doesn't have access to the level of expertise in the taxation of these developments that really let us know what level of taxes they're paying, whether it's, what is it, the developer, what is, again,
Watermark.
Watermark,
Yeah.
whether it's Fifth Avenue Committee, whether it's the diocese in one way or the other. So if anyone knows of a good tax attorney that has any familiarity, I'm serious, I'm not being funny.
No, no,
Because we could be told a lot of things, but unless you're an expert, this is not the person who does your taxes by April 15th.
Yeah.
This is a specialty of specialties, and they only work normally because they're very expensive for developers. They don't do pro bono work. So that's a question that maybe we can drill down, those who have access to Watermark and Fifth Avenue Committee, to keep asking and let them know we're not buying your answer and we want details.
Maria, could you say the full question to make sure that
Right.
we record the full
What is the detailed situation with the taxes that will be paid by the three entities once this property is developed and then occupied? Because it's going to be different. Watermark status is different from Fifth Avenue's status to the diocese as far as the IRS is concerned. I know that much. Most people know that much. They are treated differently.
Yeah.
So that's, if you allow me, just one more, and then I'll, when everybody else has their questions, if I may have the, I have a question about beyond the diocese. Does the archdiocese have any opportunity or responsibility? Because I haven't been a Catholic for a long, long time. To have an oversight role, or in New York, this might be different somewhere else, I don't know. All the total control of a development of a property under their purview sits with the diocese. Or can we reach out to the archdiocese, since we have a new archbishop that seems to be a lot friendlier to working class and people, and sort of put a bee in his bonnet and say, hey, guy, you're new. We like what you're saying. We like your approach. There's something here that I think could be done better. Can you help this community out? Can you help the working class people, the people in the neighborhood who you said in your acceptance speech, that's who you are and that's who you would be?
Thank you, Maria.
Yeah, I think just to respond very quickly, I'll take the first question for sure. The second question, absolutely. I mean, I think as a community members can reach out to the diocese. What we see with religious institutions writ large is they have property, they unload their property like all private owners with an interest at maximizing their profit to do whatever it is they intend to do. So I think, we can certainly have that conversation and try to compel, this is not the first or last property the Catholic Church will dispose of in this community, regardless of its history here and connection. But I think, does it have an oversight responsibility? If you're talking morally, yes. Within the law, no. Yeah. So those are different questions. I think, the bounds that I have to operate under is what is the New York City law that we have to deal with. But I think you can pose that question and ask them to come and note the amount of property they have, let's say in Community Board 7, and
St. Michael, and they are the people who also
Yeah, and also how they have the school that just closed at OLPH and that property is sitting there. And what's what are they going to be doing to dispossess that property as well?
Maria.
Can't speak without the microphone because they can't hear you on Zoom.
And now, since we're speaking of this, I think I'll start drafting a letter to the Pope. Hey,
All right,
do you
I'm
look?
with it. Thank you.
Maria.
Thank you, Maria.
Hi, my name is Brian Dents. Myself and the people around me are part of the 27th Street Block Association. We've been a block association for, I don't know, 20 years, if not longer. We drafted a letter and we have at the moment 22 signatures, which we gathered yesterday. And it addresses this specific issue. We've been meeting and we are the most impacted in terms of locally the construction and the immediate situation. We've watched St. Rocco's from when it was a church to what it is now, which no one wants. We want to see housing there. So I'm going to read this letter with your permission, okay? Dear Councilmember Aviles and members of Community Board 7, we're writing on behalf of the undersigned residents and property owners of 27th Street between 4th and 5th Avenues in Brooklyn. This letter concerns the proposed rezoning and development at 783 4th Avenue. To be clear up front, we are not opposed to this project. We welcome new housing on our block. We want the vacant church land to be developed, and we applaud the current plan's inclusion of 88 permanent affordable units averaging 55 AMI. That's a meaningful commitment, and we recognize the need for affordable housing in our neighborhood and across the city. That said, we have real concerns about how this project is structured, how it will affect our block, and whether the promises being made are enforceable. We're asking you to activate for the following as this application moves. We're asking you to advocate for the following as this application moves through ULURP. A legally binding community benefits agreement. In 2021, the City Council unanimously approved the rezoning of 737 4th Avenue, just 2 blocks north of the site. On the same corridor in the same community district, that approval came with a legally binding community benefits agreement, CBA, signed by the developer Totem and several community organizations, including the Fifth Avenue Committee. The CBA guaranteed affordability levels, local job creation, MWBE contracting, publicly accessible bike parking, and an easement for an MTA elevator at 25th Street subway station. Then Councilmember Menchaca called it the clearest example yet of community-driven accountable development. More recently, the Our Linen rezoning at 467 Prospect Avenue, also in Community Board 7, was approved in February 2025 with a legally binding CBA that capped building height below what the zoning would otherwise allow, required 40% affordability, and included subsidized community space and local hiring commitments. If CBAs were the standard for both of these projects, they should certainly be the standard for a 214-unit project on our block. We demand that the applicant negotiate and execute a legally binding CBA with the community before this rezoning is approved. The Fifth Avenue Committee, the nonprofit expected to develop Building C, was a signature to the 737 4th Avenue CBA and a party to the Our Linen CBA. They already know this framework. The CBA is not just one of our asks, it's the mechanism that makes all of our asks enforceable. Every concern outlined below should be addressed as a binding term within that agreement. We'd also note that the project's headline of affordability figure, 41% of residential floor area, depends entirely on Building C, separately financed. 100% affordable building to be developed by the Fifth Avenue Committee under an HPD ELLA term sheet. Without Building C, the enforceable affordability for buildings A and B is 25%. The MIH baseline. We have no reason to doubt Building C will happen, but given that the overall scale of this project is justified in part by that 41% number, the CBA should include a clear timeline and milestone for Building C's delivery, so the community can have confidence that the full affordability program will materialize as promised. Number two, lower zoning for 27th Street and a binding height cap at a minimum. Under this proposal, mid-block 27th Street would be rezoned R7A, which allows buildings up to 115 feet with affordable housing. Building B at 9 stories and 94 feet would go up directly next to existing 2-story row houses. That's the core problem. The city has handled this consistency across 5 boroughs, higher density districts on avenues, lower density contextual districts in mid-block side streets. The 205 South Slope rezoning mapped R8A slash C24 on 4th Avenue and R6B on the mid-blocks. The 209 Sunset Park rezoning did the same. Bedford-Stuy, North mapped R6B in mid-blocks, quote, to preserve the low-rise row house style character, unquote. The Upper West Side rezoned used R8B in mid-blocks, Crown Heights, West mapped R6B on east-west streets, and so on and so forth. And with more examples, I'm not going to bore us all with. So basically, this is roughly R78 is 115 blocks, is roughly double the height mid-block streets typically receive. DCP's own descriptions place R78 districts on avenues and wide streets, not 60-foot wide streets next to 2-story homes. This is not how contextual rezoning works in New York City. The overwhelming citywide pattern across decades of rezoning is to protect narrow residential streets with lower density districts. This proposal asks the community to accept a significant departure from the standard without any compelling justification for why 27th Street should be treated differently. This project is also another example of why the Special 4th Avenue Enhancement Commercial District, EC1, should be extended south from its current boundary at 25th Street to at least 36th Street. The avenue doesn't change character at 25th Street. It's the same wide transit-served corridor. Rezoning this corridor block by block through individual developer applications produces exactly this kind of.
Ryan, I'm sorry, I don't mean to pause you. I just want to recognize that the council member has about 5 more minutes with us. I just want, does anyone have any questions before the council member has to step out? And then we can continue.
I understand. So I'm going to go through it really quick, okay? We want the waste management to be dealt with in terms of the architecture. So there isn't piles of trash like in much of Manhattan. The offsite, we'd like them to have offsite construction parking. So all the construction workers will have a place to park. So our street isn't a one parking lot for them. And we'd like to have a construction management plan and contact with them. I mean, the real big issue is we want affordable housing, but the kind of height which they're asking us to swallow. I mean, it's fine. We want affordable housing in New York, but does all of the affordable housing have to happen on 27th Street? I mean, it's a massive scale for, 1, 2, and 3-story buildings on 27th Street. So that's one of the main issues that we have.
Before we get to your question, there's a question behind you. I'll have you ask. Are there any questions?
Thank you. I co-sign all of that. I'm a resident of 27th
Hi,
Street.
can you please give your name?
I'm so sorry. Nicole La Rosa. I'm a resident of 27th Street as well. I'm 2 houses off the development. So what I co-sign all of that, and I wanted to also say that I wanted to just mention a couple of things about safety during construction and after. Our neighborhood, our block, the area near the 25th Street subway has been seeing some safety concerns, some crime, some harassment, things like that. I think this committee knows about that. And so I want to just see this building be a good partner in that sense and keep the construction site well lit and maybe have security guards and be aware of the fact that it's going to be this big, giant construction site that can feel very unsafe when people are walking there at night and on our block too. And then for the future, and this is down the line, I know, but when the building gets built, I'd love to see the frontage of the building also, well lit either doorman or security guards. I think that's something that they can do to partner with us for safety for the community. Thank you. And then just really quick, who is in possession of the site now? Is it still the church, and who can we contact? Because
As the trash is
exactly,
gross. I was taking
exactly.
pictures of it, the other morning. I call sanitation on that one too. Um, uh, it should be watermark, and in fact, I think I don't remember if I sent the text message and did the 311 because I did notice the trash condition on 27th, I think it was,
Yes.
right? Yeah, it's been very bad. They have not been maintaining it at all.
Yeah, it blows right in our front yard. I mean, it's
Yeah,
disgusting.
It's terrible, and hopefully you are not getting tickets for that. If you are, please let us know because that's what happens, right? Trash blows down the block and then a sanitation guy appears and then you get a ticket. It's unacceptable that the site is currently like that and has been like that for a minute. I've noticed it comes and goes, the trash.
I mean, I'm not going to say the church was any better because they weren't, but
Right, but we're dealing with it now.
Yeah.
And certainly the shoveling too was something I also noticed. Again, I'm your neighbor. I walk by all the time and my phone is filled with photographs of the things that drive us all insane.
mean, if there-
I will up that again.
yeah, if there's a contact, I think we would all really like to have it because we're the ones that see it day in and day out, and I'm happy to be on it. Thank you so much.
And then we have one question in the back. Oh, sorry, can you just pass it to the back and then we'll get to you after?
Thanks. So I think firstly, I want to say in land use conversations tend to be among the most heated in New York City. Certainly in the history of this board, there's been some tension, and I like the tenor of this conversation so far. I'm really glad y'all showed up. Please keep showing up. I want to keep having this conversation. And I think one of the ways that we've been able to have, at least in this moment, I think starting with the principles that you laid out is a really helpful way to ground us in a shared understanding. And I want to keep doing that and kind of keep having that as this conversation unfolds and probably attracts more attention over the next however long, 6 months, year, this sort of thing. I would add one foundational principle, which is coming from my lens, which is that we need more housing. So I agreed with all of the foundational principles laid out here, and one that I would add to that table. And there's plenty of asterisks, and I'm sure plenty of people have feelings on that statement, but that's where I'm coming from. Okay, now for questions for you, council member. So the first is more of a sort of rah-rah for you. I'm currently reading a book called The High Cost of Free Parking. So parking policy is like my jam right now. And I would encourage anyone who's really excited about being a parking nerd. It's like the Bible of it. But I know you said it's down to 9 spots. I would encourage you to get that to 0. I really believe that is a crucial part of affordability conversation in New York City writ large. So kind of keep pushing on that. Second is more of a question. I might have missed it, but you said it started at 266. Now it's down to 214. I'd be curious to hear kind of how that happened. Was it about making the units bigger from, less studios, more family? Is that why it went down, or kind of how that conversation went? And then the third, may have missed this too, but I know, I believe you were saying that Building C is going to rely on HPD funds, and I know the pipeline for those funds is years and years out. So is that already secured? Is this kind of a theoretical, or what the deal on that HPD funding is looking like?
Thank you, Heard. On the parking, we'll continue to push. The HPD funding, it is true. There's a giant backlog. It is a concern that we have brought up. It's a concern with even current projects that have already passed rezoning, that are waiting to get developed. It's something we're going to have to keep pushing, and particularly with a federal context that is diminishing of the resources for all kinds of things. I think it's going to be a continued accountability. I would, if I had my druthers and I were queen for a day, I would have all the 100% affordable units built first as a show of goodwill and commitment, because often that is last. And often it can fall to the wayside if you don't hold accountability, which is what we see all over the place. So I think our job will be to collectively make sure that that gets built. If we move forward together in this way. And we have to be on top of HPD and their leadership around how the projects, unfortunately, we have an insane system that makes no sense. It really just depends on how consistently loud and persistent you are about moving projects through a pipeline. Yeah. Yeah, sure. No, absolutely.
Well, I just want one more comment. I did,
Your name, please?
Jonathan Steinke, my wife, 27th Street. The, the Catholic Church is not dispossessing that land. They're leasing it.
That's right.
So they own that land and they'll always own that land. And so we should look into what's happening tax-wise, because I'm sure it's to the benefit of the developers to do this. The other thing is like the proposal for 25 parking lots that now has gone down to 9. And the reason is to make more affordable housing. Why does that have to be part of the affordable housing? Why can't the developer take a hit on that? Because that's our community and they're going to be in our community and they want to be good neighbors. And, you know, the parking is just going to be absolutely insane. And 25, you know, if we could have 15 more parking spots for those people, that would be a big benefit for us, right? That's quality of life things.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, John. I hear you. I think the parking isn't a one-to-one affordability. It's parking versus apartments, right? That's the rub. So the decreased parking doesn't mean we got more affordable units. It means we got just more units. When we get more units, we get more affordability. So like they kind of increase together. Part of City of Yes was this debate about parking and the need for parking and how expensive. It is incredibly expensive to build a parking spot. And in some cases, and I understand the frustration of being a car owner and not having, but because we actually live right on top of a subway, I think the city has taken a position that in transit-rich areas, that the preference will be, because you have to make a trade-off. You build the housing or you build the parking. And in this context, we've chosen the housing. And so that tension will definitely be there. And I own a car. I understand the drama, but as a matter of principle, right? That's what the city has chosen as its policy, particularly in transit-rich areas. So like a place like Red Hook, where there is no subway, there's a different policy there. But because this part of Sunset Park is rich with both subway and buses, it has chosen, and I actually agree with it, despite the challenges and the tensions that will continue to arise, that we build more housing instead of parking. So that's the challenge. So what happens is affordability is in the mix for sure, right? But it's not a one-to-one correlation. But because our law only says 25%, right, is the mandate, you'll only get, if you want more units, you have to go higher, right? So like, it's like these consistent trade-offs between density and height and the number of units, between the number of parking and the number of units, between the bedrooms and how many units you can actually build. So you see they skew often to studios, 1-bedrooms, because you can get more units. But the tension is we have families and we want people to be able to live in place. So we need you. So that means you have more bedrooms, you have less units. So it's this consistent scale that often feels out of whack and is often inadequate for our needs, right? We need all the things all the time, but unfortunately we can't have all the things all the time. So that's a little bit what's behind all of these very difficult situations, which is why I said I probably won't answer and I may not fully satisfy, because we are working with very imperfect situations, but there are a lot of things can I leave with the letter or are you going to, oh, Edward has a letter. Great. We will definitely respond.
Hi, I'm Caroline Wolf. This is just a quick question.
No.
in general, the part of like, this is a bigger conversation because of the, like, not everyone knows, but this is like, we're zoned like manufacturing, light manufacturing, and it's like this little parcel, this like island. And I'm just wondering, is there any thought with the community board or your office in general about looking at the zoning of this whole area? In terms of affordability, especially because I feel like, I don't know, I look at the KFC and I'm like, there's a KFC taking up like half a city block.
That,
Like,
I just got notice that they're looking at that for development as well.
Oh, wow.
I just got
Well,
notice. So I think,
it's like a double-edged sword. Like I've lived on the block since 2008, which isn't that long, but it is an interesting thing in our neighborhood. We have all this like beautiful sky and wonderful community, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a ripe area in general with all these one-story buildings. Like, I just wondered if that's a bigger conversation that puts this in, maybe.
yeah, it's an important conversation. I think the housing committee certainly wants to have that. I think these are the things that our community, because it is a community in transition, right? The city is looking to densify. We are an industrial manufacturing mixed community, right? And there are spaces that are underutilized. And there are a lot of warehouses that are quite frankly sitting empty because the owners know they're waiting for their bonanza. There's also zoning changes that are happening, right? We had the city of yes and all what that meant. But I think the questions of how our city does not comprehensively plan, which has been a real problem for all of us, right? Because we do spot rezonings and it's frustrating catch up. So I think yes is the answer to the question. We have to talk about what it is, how we vision our future, what our needs are going to be, right? Like how much schools, how much do our emergency services keep up with our development? Often they do not, right? So we do need to talk about that. I will just say, as an industrial manufacturing mixed use community, right? We in this very room have had many robust debates about our commitment to industrial manufacturing, to keeping jobs in the community, and we sit with that tension. And in the land use principles, there is also discussion about protecting our M zones. I think what is challenging is M zones that are not getting used and are sitting unused are a real problem, especially when we would need to build more housing. So, yeah, so there's this, I think healthy transition, but we should, and the last time the community did a 197A plan was, I don't know, 30 years ago, right? A lot has changed. So we do need to have these conversations about what is it how do we want to grow as a community? Because this is New York City, we grow. What is it that we need, how we vision that. I will say when you open up corridors to rezoning, I'm hesitant to do that here, quite frankly. We see Fourth Avenue corridor is right for rezoning because it's width, right? But when you open up corridors, you open up corridors. And then we're having very different kinds of conversations. We can try to harness that, but I'm skeptical. We've seen the city do corridor wide rezonings and it's not only a process, but I think you often don't get anything of what you expect. Now, one thing I just want to say before I have to go, I'm sorry I have to go. I really appreciate the conversation. We will respond. We will continue to talk. The community benefits agreements that you noted and Fifth Avenue committees long, I just have to say, they are actually not as enforceable as they seem. We have seen many community benefits go out the water. So I will say it's not a silver bullet and you don't get everything you need with a community benefits agreement, but I understand the inclination around it. And, we should ask the question. And it does require a legal party. So I think there is that question, but I will bring forward the question. But I think just hold in your mind that just because it's there doesn't mean everything gets actually done. We've seen quite the opposite. They've gotten better, but they're not a regulatory document. And they're kind of almost like my framework. It would require countersuing, and often at that point, everybody's kind of like, no water in the tank. Yeah, so with that, I just want to thank you. Thank you for your engagement, for the letter. We'll continue to talk. They will be here again. We are still taking more feedback and we'll continue to relay the feedback. And if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much for your time and for being here tonight. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to say actually, I being on the community board and then actually not being on it for the totem rezoning and then also for the Era Linen, I think this is why it's important for you all to be involved right now immediately, because those CBAs that were written did not really have neighbors and community associations on signing on to them. They had nonprofits. Honestly, there wasn't much community engagement. And that to me, the totem rezoning CBA was totally rushed. The Era Linen one, from my perspective, basically, came about from the nonprofits involved and not much of the people who lived on Windsor Terrace who are going to be impacted. So it's really important because there are possibilities of including like neighborhood block associations in this agreement. It's much trickier, and it's also, you don't have a nonprofit, so it's hard to incorporate somebody who's not a nonprofit into it. And then again, like Alexa said, the only enforcement is basically if you all want to sue them later on. And what we've seen through all these community benefits agreements is that 10, 15 years down the road, there's a lot of people who signed on the agreement who their entities don't even exist anymore, or nobody has any funds to basically put a legal challenge. So one of the biggest things right now is like the Atlantic Yards, 20 years later, and we're still waiting for almost 1,000 affordable apartments. And the landlord was supposed, or the developer was supposed to be fined $1 million a month for it. And for some reason, the state let them free of it, and it got sold to a different developer who's now asking for money to build some of those affordable units. So this is 20 years after the fact. And, like you said, why it's important to build the affordable housing first. They built Barclay Center first. They built all the private, market rate units first. And 20 years later, we're still waiting for 1,000 affordable units. So there's a lot of flaws to that part, but it's important to you all be engaged. So I appreciate that you're here and that engaging in it.
Sorry, we'll just need for you to,
Oh yeah, sure.
thank you.
This may be a stupid question. When they build affordable units, what keeps them affordable? And is that like a legally binding thing? And how is that and what, I just don't know about that.
Yeah. So what it is that they're rent stabilized. And then so based on what's the AMI, the area median income, they set that. And so you can see in this document, it actually has like what the rent would be. And then so that would be set, and then it would be part of a rent stabilized apartment. So it'd be part of the like overseen by DHCR, Department of Community Home Renewal, and also the Rent Guidelines Board. So then the rents are set to what the Rent Guidelines Board says, which is so. Yeah. So if the median income changes, which it's changing and getting rapidly more expensive, it does not affect them. Like when they come in, then they're tied to what the Rent Guidelines Board does. So the rent increases are based off of just what the Rent Guidelines Board does. But like you said, this is what's really tricky. If they build these affordable units 5 years from now or 10 years from now, the AMI could be vastly higher because we know that New York City, and the sad part about AMI is it's a federal mechanism. So it's based off of actually not just New York City, all of New York City, but also Westchester and other areas. So they take the totality of, and so because of that, AMI is vastly higher than sort of what's the average median income for Sunset Park is about 45,000 or so. But what that sort of AMI is for the whole city in Westchester is now at like 90,000 or so, which is twice as much as Sunset Park. So that's why the metrics are not great at all for our community. And so, yeah, you're right that if they build the affordable housing in 5 years and the AMI goes up to 110,000 or whatever number, that increases the rents. So I mean, and the unfortunate thing is I don't think we could say peg the rents to AMI of this time. Like, I don't know. Maybe we could say that that's an interesting element because it's like, it's a federal, the AMI is from HUD, from Housing Urban Development. So it's hard to be like, they dictate what AMI is, they do the survey, they say this is what it comes out as. But it is interesting if we could say, is there a way to actually say this needs to be for affordability for this time and this year and not 5 years from now, whenever it gets built?
Does anyone else have any final comments that they wanted to add? Anyone on the line? No? So before we close, I just wanted to add that Watermark Capital is also involved in a separate project in the neighborhood. They're building they're working with other developers to put up a 28-story as of right development with zero affordability. So that will be entirely market rate. We have a newer building that went up on 4th Avenue, 875 4th Avenue, and I just looked up the going price for a 2-bedroom at 776 square feet is going for close to $4,400 a month. It's 875 4th Avenue between 32nd and 33rd Street. Thank you. So that's what we're faced with here. So really appreciate you all being here, being present, as a follow-up, and I'll be scheduling a meeting, for April, where we should take a deep dive into the land use principles, and seeing how we can weigh in on what revisions should be made to the housing aspect and work with the council member's office on those updates. The developer is going to be here on April 13th. They're going to be presenting, really encourage you to come out again, be involved, ask your questions. And I see we have a hand raised from Pat Ruiz. Before we close, I'll give Pat the floor if you want to unmute your line.
Hi, good evening. I'm just wondering, since land use is also having a meeting on the 13th, is there any reason why land use and housing cannot partner together on future meetings?
Sure, and that's a question that we can bring to the board chair. Do you have any other questions, Pat?
Nope, and I'll make sure I bring this up to Julio because I think it'd be a great idea for a lot of folks not to have to come to too many meetings on the same topic. With all due respect, I don't mean anything bad by it.
Yeah, definitely. But I also think that having as many conversations on this does no harm.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And just wanted to say too, we had plans as well to discuss some of the other affordability stuff going on. There's actually some major changes possibly to land use on public land that the Zoran Mamdani administration is doing. So we'll probably discuss that for another meeting. And, but yeah, this came up basically, and Alexa made herself available for this meeting. So we figured it was important to have her start engaging and talking with people. And,
Wonderful.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll be sure to circulate the slide deck that we had prepared for this evening, and we can circle back on that agenda item at our next meeting and also review the land use principles as it relates to housing. So again, thank you all for being here today, and thank you for everyone who stayed on the phone line for the entirety of the meeting. Have a great night. Thank you.